them down around my knees, and I just laid down on the ground. She gets on top of me. She moves her body a couple of times. I reach my climax, and all the while this is happening, I am staring into those big eyes of hers. And when I finish, I just pass out. And about 5 minutes later, I wake up, and I don't remember a thing, except I am scared. I don't know why my clothes are down around my knees. And I jump up, pull them up, and I keep saying to myself, what happened? Why don't I remember this? Why are my clothes like this? And I just run from that spot. And by the time I got to Altoona Lake, I had totally forgotten the incident.
So you were not able to retrieve these memories until later after some sort of a hypnotic regression session?
I never had a hypnotic regression at all.
Oh. So the memories came back to you. These are all conscious memories then, what you're relating to me?
Right at that time, yes. But I was made to forget everything.
Right. Let's jump ahead. Now, you continue having interaction with different kinds of beings, but in 1965, you're 19 years old, you move to New York City, and then it sort of picks up the pace, right? Start the story there.
Okay. I came to New York to study art. I was at the Art Students League, and I had a part-time job working at a hardware store on the east side called Manhattan Hardware. And one day I was putting stock on the shelves, and I happened to look up, and I noticed that there was this man and woman, and they were looking at me. I stopped doing what I was doing. I went over to them, and I said, "May I help you?" And they didn't say a word to me. But I found myself just staring into their eyes. And for some reason, I get scared, and I say, "May I help you?" Then they still didn't say anything, and I stepped back. And when I stepped back, they quickly turned, and they left the hardware store. And as the day progressed, it was started to rain, and this was during the transit strike in 1965. And everybody was just like walking around or trying to get a taxi or whatever. There was no mass transit. And it was raining very hard, and it was time to leave. And I just knew that it was going to be one very wet walk, and I had to go across Central Park. I get to Fifth Avenue and 72nd Street, and I just hold out my thumb. Everybody was hitchhiking at that time. And this big black car stops. I open the door, and there is this woman driving. And she says, "Where are you going?" And I say, "Ma'am, if you can just take me across Central Park, I can walk the rest of the way." And she says, "Get in." I get into the car, close the door, and we drive across Central Park. We didn't talk very much. The rain was heavy, and there was a lot of traffic, and well, you just don't talk to the driver in conditions like that. But we get to the other side, and I say, "You can just let me out anywhere along here. I can walk home." And she says, "Where do you live?" And I said, "Well, I live up on 87th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam." And she says, "I'll take you." And so she did. We stop in front of our building, and she just turns and looks at me. And she doesn't say a word, and I say, "Well, ma'am, thank you very much. You really saved me a soaking." She still doesn't say anything to me, but she's just staring at me with these large eyes of hers. And then I just say, "Well, thank you again," and I get out of the car, close it, and I run to the building, and that's it. And I go to my apartment, take a bath and everything. I was pretty well soaked. And that night I had, well, George, I want to say it was a dream, okay? I really do. And the dream consisted of this. It was a woman's face. Her eyes were closed, but that's all I saw. I just saw her face. And the face came closer to me. And I don't remember anything else after that. But as the days and weeks went by, I had the same dream over and over. And then slowly the dream changed. I started to think that I was having sex. I was someone on top of me, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And the surroundings was in my bedroom. And there was like, as these dreams progressed, I noticed that there was something standing in the corner. It looked stick-like, a stick-like figure. And there was a glow about it. And then I noticed, other details, really, like the wall. There was something wrong with the wall, but I didn't know what it was. And I kept trying to tell myself that these were just very strange dreams. But they got to the point where they became so very, very vivid. And then one morning, I wake up and I hear these words, "We'll be back tonight." Well, I went to school, I had my part-time job, and after that was over with, I would come home. And again, there would be this, woman. And suddenly she is there along with this glowing figure. I don't know what to call him, really. But he would go to a corner and he would just stand there. And for the next few weeks or a couple of months, I would keep hearing these words. In the morning, "We'll be back tonight." And I would keep coming home. There was one time, it was in the late fall, and I did not know what was going on. I just was kind of going crazy in a way. And that Friday morning, I hear those words again, "We'll be back tonight." But this time, I did not forget. And that whole day was just like a mental battle between the left side and the right side of my brain. And by the end of that day, I was totally exhausted. I kept saying, "It's real. No, it isn't. It's a dream, but it isn't." It was back and forth. And that evening, when I went home, I passed a florist. And in the window, there were these flowers. There was a flowering plant called a pink cyclamen. And it got to a point where I said, okay, bottom line, I'll buy the flowers. I'll take them home. If this woman shows up, then I will say, those are for you. They're for her. If she doesn't show up, I will use the flowers in a painting. I bought the flowers, took them home, put them on a bookcase. And later that night, I went to bed. In the morning, I get up. I had to get down to the league because I had quit the hardware store, and I had a job working in the gallery at the Art Students League. And I passed the bookcase, and I look at the bookcase, and something wasn't right. I felt I had put something there, but I couldn't remember what it was. I just didn't know. And I'm kind of scratching my head, but it's getting a little late, so I take a shower and everything, get ready. I go down to the league, and that's it. 12 o'clock, it was time to go for lunch. And I had some time to spare, and I was on the first floor, and I went to the back studios on the first floor, and I happened to pass Mario C. Cooper's watercolor class. And there were all these flower arrangements in his studio. And suddenly it hit me. She took the flowers. I suddenly remembered everything. And I remembered the incident where I was lying in my bed. The woman is looking at the flowers. The insect being was standing close by. And then I said, those are for you. She picked up the flowers, and her and the insect being left. And I followed, and my eyes followed them, and they went through an opening in the wall. I was so relieved. I really thought I was going nuts.
You're relieved that they walked through this opening in the wall because and taking the flowers.
That she took the flowers.
Yeah.
It was confirmation for me. And anyway, the rest of the day, I couldn't get over it. And I said, oh, she's real. This isn't some crazy dream. And, well, on Saturdays, the Art Students League closes early. And I closed up the gallery. And I went home. I cleaned up the apartment. I washed dishes that had been in the sink for a couple of days. I mopped and cleaned the floors. I straightened up the studio I had and the rest of the apartment. And I waited. I knew she was coming back that night. I knew it as well as I know that I'm talking to you right now. And that evening, I'm lying in the bed, and I'm staring at the wall. And suddenly I see a small spot on the wall, and suddenly everything gets very, very quiet. There are not even are there any street sounds. And this opening, it opens up to about 6 feet in diameter. First, the insect being comes through, and he goes and he stands in the corner. And the woman comes through, and she comes right over, and she looks at me, and she's very, very pleased. I just know that she is. And she sits down on the bed beside me, and I'm just looking at her. I hadn't fallen asleep now. I had been awake all through this. But as soon as that opening was there, I felt certain changes within myself. It was as if my brain had kind of, it had become numb, like certain centers of my brain became numb or paralyzed or whatever, I don't know. But I had not fallen asleep. Now, what was very interesting, I had the blanket on, and the woman was looking at me, and I removed the blanket. I have an erection. But what even surprised me more than that is that I was able to move, whereas before, during the other times, I had been paralyzed. And, we start, what I can only say, began rubbing our heads together. It was like, I would say it was the first time there was foreplay.
Yeah, let's jump ahead a little bit, David. You start sort of giving Crescent and then later others sort of lessons in how humans interact, romance, caring, that sort of thing that accompanies sexual interaction, right?
Yes. And they were very interested in this. And anyway, this is going on for quite a while, and then something very strange happens. I'm in my makeshift studio, and I'm doing some work, and suddenly that opening that I spoke about earlier opened up in my wall, and there is the woman, and then she says, "David, the baby is dying." She was very stressed out. I could hear it in her voice. And I remember saying, "Baby? What baby?" She says, "Your baby, but it's dying." And I say, "Let me see my baby." And at first she wouldn't do it. And then I just yelled it out, "Let me see my baby."